What's up? It's me again. Following the South initially seceding from the Union, there were 200 resolutions and 57 amendments proposed in Congress to permanently enshrine slavery into the highest document of the land. On February 28, 1861, with the support of Abraham Lincoln, the U.S. House of Representatives passed the Corwin Amendment, a bill that would make slavery permanent in the United States Constitution. The text of the bill stated, quote, "No amendment shall be made to the Constitution which will authorize or give Congress the power to abolish or interfere within any state with the domestic institutions thereof, including that of persons held to labor or service by the laws of the land." Close quote. It was passed by northern and southern states alike on a vote of 133 to 65, more than a 2-to-1 ratio. 2 days later, the U.S. Senate would pass it, with virtually the same overwhelming majority percentage in favor. It was then signed by the outgoing President James Buchanan, and then immediately ratified by the northern state governments of Kentucky, Ohio, Rhode Island, Maryland, and Lincoln's own home state of Illinois. Now, if it's true that the South seceded from the United States as a last desperate attempt to keep their slaves, like many of us were told, one might expect the Confederacy to emphatically jump at the opportunity to have their human property protected by the highest legal document of the land, and victoriously return to the Union. But they did not. The Confederates rejected the sincere enticement for repatriation presented by the North. Now ask yourself, does passing a law guaranteeing to never end slavery sound like the actions of a president or Congress who want to abolish it? No! The first intention absolutely contradicts the second. However, somehow the Corwin Amendment has been swept under the historical rug, hidden from the public, because it exposes the carnage and human suffering Abraham Lincoln was willing to wreak for his own political ambition, and replaces our beloved national messiah with a tyrant and a madman. I never learned about this in school. Did you? Let me know in the comments. Even the radical abolitionist Lysander Spooner refused to allow Lincoln to use the righteous cause of abolition as a smokescreen for his barbarism, making it clear that, quote, "On the parts of the North, the war was carried on, not to liberate the slaves, but by a government that had always perverted and violated the Constitution to keep the slaves in bondage, and was still willing to do so, if the slaveholders could be thereby induced to stay in the Union." Close quote. The Northern state-dominated Congress confirmed Spooner's statement in late July 1861 by passing the War Aims Resolution Act, which declared, quote, "The war is not waged upon our part for any purpose of interference with the rights or established institutions of those states." Close quote. The institution primarily being referred to here is slavery. President Lincoln was unequivocal in his stated purpose for starting the Civil War, writing in a letter to New York Tribune editor Horace Greeley on August 22, 1862, which was 16 months into the conflict, quote, "My paramount objective in this struggle is to save the Union, and it is neither to save or destroy slavery. If I could save the Union without freeing any slave, I would do it. And if I could save it by freeing all the slaves, I would do it. And if I could save it by freeing some and leaving others alone, I would also do that." Close quote. The Corwin Amendment makes this perfectly evident. The Civil War was not about slavery. Stepping back for a moment, ask yourself, do these explicit actions and policies represent the values of a northern population willing to shed the blood of its children to end slavery in faraway states? How about these newspaper editorials? From the Concord, New Hampshire Democrat Standard, quote, "The proposition that the Negro is equal by nature, physically and mentally, to the white man seems to be so absurd and preposterous that we cannot conceive how it can be entertained by any intelligent and rational white man." Published on September 8th, 1860, 7 months before the Civil War. Or what about this one from the Boston Courier? Quote, We believe the mulatto to be inferior in capacity, character, and organization to the full-blooded black, and still farther below the standard of the white races. Close quote. Published on September 24th, 1860, 7 months before the Civil War. Or this one from the Philadelphia Daily News. Quote, "It is neither for the good of the colored race nor of our own that they should continue to dwell among us to any considerable extent. The two races can never exist in conjunction except as superior and inferior. The African is naturally the inferior race." Close quote. Published on November 22nd, 1860. We're not talking about decades before here. And lastly, from the Niles Republican of Michigan. Quote, "This government was made for the benefit of the white race, and not for Negroes." Close quote. Published on March 30th, 1861, less than 1 month before the Civil War started. Or perhaps the words of Republican Congressman John Sherman of Ohio, brother of Lincoln's General William T. Sherman, as written in a letter to his brother on April 2nd, 1862. Quote, "We do not like the Negroes. We do not disguise our dislike. As my friend from Indiana said yesterday, the whole people of the northwestern states are opposed to having many Negroes among them, and that principle of prejudice has been engraved in the legislation for nearly all the northwestern states." Close quote. Also consider the words of General Sherman himself, owner of 2 slaves, stating, quote, "All the Congress on earth can't make the Negro anything less than what he is. He must be subject to the white man, or he must amalgamate or be destroyed. 2 such races cannot live in harmony, save as master and slave." Close quote. And lastly, Lincoln's ally and leader in the abolitionist movement, Republican Senator Benjamin Wade of Ohio, calling Washington, D.C., quote, "a God-forsaken, nigger-ridden place," close quote, and saying he wanted to hire a white woman housekeeper because, quote, "I am sick and tired of niggers," close quote, and complaining about food cooked, quote, "by niggers until I can smell and taste the nigger," close quote. It just goes to show that the Northern abolitionist movement did not want to free slaves for humanitarian purposes, but because, as stated in earlier videos, they just wanted to get rid of them. Moreover, the Republican Senator Wade became very critical of Lincoln for not recruiting black soldiers into the army quickly enough, wanting for them to die fighting instead of white soldiers. Now, given that the North was willing to make slavery permanent in the Constitution, and therefore proving that they did not enter the Civil War to end it, how does this all reconcile with Lincoln's issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation? For many, surely this is a smoking gun proving that Lincoln invaded the South to end slavery. But is it really? The answer is no. Otherwise, I wouldn't even be doing these videos. More to come.